Big Tin Can is the world's leading sales learning and enablement platform that delivers the onboarding and training, preparation, coaching, customer engagement, and follow-up and insights that modern businesses need to win.
Welcome to the Sales Influence Podcast, where we talk about finding the why and how people buy. I'm your host, Victor Antonio. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for lending me those beautiful ears. And if you're watching this on video, which you should be, thank you for those eyeballs. Today, I go to Trinidad Tobago, well, really the Bahamas, but banking off of Trinidad Tobago with Mr. Jarrod Mitchell. Jarrod, what's happening?
Good morning, Victor. How are you? Yes, I'm all the way in Bahamas, but yes, repping my amazing country of Trinidad and Tobago every single day.
I love it, man. I love it. By the way, I've been trying to get you on the podcast. It's been my fault, so I apologize for that. I finally got you on the podcast. I want you to start out by letting these folks know why they should just tune in at this point to listen to what you have to say.
Because video is the number one way that you're going to be able to reach your prospects in sales. And I am a master at it, having done over 6,000 videos, personalized videos on LinkedIn, 2 connections with a 40% response rate.
Really? That's a big number, man. 40% response rate.
Yes.
That is amazing, man. Give them a little background about who you are, your sales background, what you do, and then let's jump into how do we prospect in just a bit.
Oh, well, I think you will enjoy me saying this. Nothing happens until a sale is made. Sales is the most important department in every single organization. I've been in sales my entire life. I've done nothing else. Working first for a telecoms company here in Trinidad and Tobago called Digicel. Left there after 5 years. Went to work DHL for 1 year, which is to tell you how much I love the color yellow. I went to Nokia after that. Then I spent 6 months at Microsoft. Then I finished my corporate career with 3 years in Samsung, growing that business. And now for the last going on 4 years, I've been a sales consultant here throughout the Caribbean, helping people sell better.
So it's funny because, we both come from a telecom background, right? Same. I don't know if you knew that.
Yeah.
But I came from that background. So, it's always an interesting sale, right? Whether it's transactional or B2B, it's always an interesting sales process. Like, what got you interested in sales, though? How did you make the transition into sales? What happened to you, man? By the way, what happened to you?
I would go back to my report card book where all my teacher says talks too much.
Little
did they know.
We can end that right there. We can end that right there. I know what you mean exactly. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Little did they know I was just forming to be a great salesperson, but just like everyone else, I fell into it. However, it was really at Digicel when I told myself, Jarrod, you can do this. You really have a knack for this, and we need to start being really serious about it. So I would always give kudos to that company, but I literally, like most people, just fell into it and realized that it was something I truly love. And in particular, what I love was when I'm the underdog and I could switch somebody's opinion to mine and get them to understand the benefits of what I'm offering. Like, that is what I enjoy. I'm truly, truly competitive.
But where did that, so zoom back. Because by the way, when you hit the report card thing, the reason I laugh so hard is because, man, that was always on my report card. Talks too much. I had like ADHD. So when someone give me the story of the person that says, hey, you know what, would you like to come into sales? And just walk me through that story, gradually. Take your time on that one. 'Cause I always like to hear the genesis story, the come up story, because everybody just, brushes over that. But I think it's always important to say, what was I thinking at the time? What were people telling me? And why did I need to do that?
So I started working for Digicel in their retail stores. And I was truly having fun at it, doing a lot of sales, helping customers. And the true change came when they had an opportunity in their corporate sales. So I was switching from B2C to B2B. The interesting thing was there was a rule at the time that you could not take somebody from B2C to B2B. That was the rule that Digicel had with their dealers. But I convinced the person in HR to give me the interview. So that was my first sale. And then something that's always worked for me throughout my entire life is that I have really great self-talk. So even before the Digicel job, when I would go to parties, I would be sitting on in the car on the way to the party. My name is Jarrod, you want to know me. My name is Jarrod, you want to know me. And I said it for like 30 minutes on the way to the party. And as you would believe, everybody would want to get to talk to me. I would talk to everyone because I just developed that mentality. So when I got the interview at Digicel, I'm sitting next to another guy, and this guy's there talking, yeah, I have my degree and da-da-da, blah, blah, blah. And I'm just there thinking, this is not your job. This is my job. And I went into the interview. I actually got hired on the spot, which was actually funny because the meeting started off with my manager, who then called in the sales director, who then called in the HR manager, and everybody at the same time just said, okay, yeah, call Richard, who was the guy that my boss in retail, and I just heard him on the phone. Yeah, Richard, we understand the rule, but we're taking him. We're taking him, okay? Thanks, Richard, bye. Click. And that was it. And it's like, you start tomorrow. And that's when I knew, okay, I really, truly, I can sell myself. I could get people excited about the idea. I could position myself well. And as I said, that I would honestly tell you is where I truly started in terms of sales.
So I want to go back even further. So let me see, if I was talking to your parents right now and they would describe you as a young man, for example, at the age of 10 to 14, somewhere in that range, what would they say?
Very hyperactive.
About your personality, you know what I mean, about who you are at the time.
Oh, well, personality-wise, I was friends with everyone.
What would they say? I want you to tell me, what would they say? Try to think of your
parents. They would say, my mother and father would say, he's too distracted, he's too hyperactive, and if he put his energies in the right place, he could be great at everything. That's what they would say about me. And overall, of course, with every parent, his grades need to be better. You're not doing enough in school, Jarrod. But that's what my parents would say.
That's interesting. And so, you're going through high school. I take it you're a talkative person like me, right? I actually was more introverted in my first couple of years of high school. And then somewhere, I think more in college is when I started coming out of my shell, so to speak.
Oh, no, that wasn't the case for me. So I'll give you an example. When I knew everyone, some people would just line in certain cliques. I line with all. Doesn't matter what type, what race, what income bracket. Everyone knew me. It was so much so that there was a day I was absent from school. And when I walked in the school the next day with a letter from my mother to say, hey, hi, Dean, I was absent yesterday. He said, Bess Mitchell, what do you have to say about that fight yesterday? I was absent. No. They said it was Bess Mitchell and his friends in the fight. I was like, sir, this is my letter from my mother that says I was absent. I was not involved in this. But because I used to hang out with everyone, everybody just associated me with anything that happened in the school. So That's much funny. So that I'm trying to figure out when you're probably doing the transition from high school to college. In the Caribbean, we have like Form 5, then you go to Form 6. My mother missed that meeting. So she went to the dean and was sitting with the dean and asked the dean, what does my son have to do to get into Form 6? And the dean just calmly said, if Jarrod gets, as they say, straight A's, we still won't let him back in his school. He's like, Jarrod is not only a troublemaker, he's the project manager, the instigator, the coordinator of anything mischievous that happens in his school. And I'm just there in shock like, no, mommy, that's a lie. And then he proceeds to pull out a book, not just from our school of complaints, but from the school next door, which is our sister school, of complaints from them. And I'm just there in shock. I'm like, I know these people. I know who did these things, but I didn't do it. I just hung out with everyone. I was just that individual.
All right, man. You're starting to sound like Shaggy. It wasn't me. It wasn't me. That's too funny. Too funny. So you get your first sales role. And I want to talk about the B2B sales role, because I think that had to be quite the transition, right? There's a transactional sale where you're in retail, you're working with people. It's about the relationship, right? Making them feel comfortable, giving them great information. Now you move over from transactional, you move into what I call more longitudinal sales, which is a longer sales cycle. How was that transition for you? Was that difficult to do for you?
For the first 3 months, in Digicel, yes, it was difficult. For the first, I think 3 to 4 months, I did not hit target. I was struggling, but at the same time, it was me just trying to learn to walk. It was trying to me crawling at those stages, just learning as time went along. But as I said, I eventually developed a mindset of always wanting to learn. And I was frequently asking questions and I was frequently testing stuff to figure out what actually work or not. So much so where I always remember this day, and this is just to show the age of how long I've been in sales. I remember just literally calling the entire page, the business page in the phone book, and everybody said no. And I just stopped at the end of the day and I'm like, this doesn't make sense. I'm clearly doing something wrong. There has to be a better way to do it. And I asked the questions and I started to become better at it. And as I say, over time, by the time I left Digicel, which was at the 5th year, I was in charge of their public sector and I was growing it by 28% per month. But that only took time because I continuously practiced, tested, and was always willing to learn.
So when you compare, 'cause I think you're in a position to kind of make this, really make comparison. You've seen people who haven't succeeded. I think you've implicitly told me the answer. I guess I just want you to say it explicitly. Yeah. What was the difference, man? What was the difference between people who came into that position and made it like yourself, and then those who didn't make it?
Well, I actually didn't allude to that. I would tell you one thing, and I'm teaching it now in the training that I'm doing now. Belief or conviction in what you sell and knowing that it can help your customer is one of the biggest things that a lot of salespeople miss out on. If you're just doing a job for a job, it's going to be ridiculously difficult.
So let me ask you a question. I'm going to interrupt you only because I really want to go deep on this, because I think you're onto something I really want to dig. Sometimes we go over this too quickly. Having a belief in a product or system, how do I develop that? Well, let's say I'm a person, I'm selling right now out there, Jarrod. I'm struggling. And then I hear you on this podcast going, you just got to have belief and competence. Well, damn it, Jarrod, how do I get that? How do I do that?
Well, one, I think it comes from looking at what it is that your customer needs to achieve. And if you understand what your product does, then you would see the benefits in it. So one, start talking to your customers. But number two, which is something I've always done, is you need to start talking to the product people, the people who've created the product, to understand why they actually did it. So that to me is actually where a lot of salespeople fall short. They literally don't spend time trying to understand the product. They only spend time just trying to sell it. And they don't spend time trying to understand why the customer wants to use it. So therefore, they cannot create that bridge of belief. Because even if, for example, not every product a salesperson can use themselves, but if you understand how the customer uses it, how it benefits them, either financially, any aspect of their lives, then you could have that conviction and belief to explain to them, listen, I know this can help you. But a lot of persons don't spend that time. They literally just take a job for the salary and they just go through the motions of selling. And I think that's why some of them fail in the short run.
I love that phrase. I never heard that phrase. So I love that. So thank you for the bridge of belief, creating that bridge of belief. Let's spend a little time here because you're hitting on something that I don't really dig within a lot of people, because if you can't get that right, the rest doesn't work, right?
Exactly.
And so give me an example. Walk me through, how do I build that bridge of belief? Like give me a tangible example. Like, Victor, okay, here's the product as we sell it. Here's the product itself, but here's what it does for the customer. And unless you understand that connection, you won't sell effectively. Give me an example of something that you went through like that. You first understood the product, connected it to the client. Victor, this is how you build that bridge of belief.
So I think, and actually, I'll give you this overall example and then get into that. So for my entire sales career, for all the companies I worked for, so when I switched to Digicel, all my family switched their phones to Digicel because I believed in the product. I got them excited about it. So I think the first step that anybody needs to understand is that you need to be enthusiastic about the outcome. If you're not enthusiastic, you're going to run into problems. The other thing that you have to understand is, what is the path, or in other words, what is the process that gets the person to get in your product or service and actually using it? And that's, I think, is that's essentially that part is where you create the bridge for the person from you introducing it into their lives, for them actually seeing it in motion and getting excited about the outcomes that you've created for them. And they'll still go back to when you understand what your product knowledge is and how it applies specifically to the customer, that's how you start building the belief. So it might not happen from the first sale. It might not happen from the second sale, but if you consistently do it and you start seeing the success your customer is getting from it, then you start to say, oh crap, okay, this really is like an amazing product. This really is making a key difference in their lives. And I think that's the steps that you need to take. And Digicel formed that for me. And then what happened after is every other job that I went into, like my friends would always say, I'm almost like a cult leader. Any job that I went into, all of a sudden, everybody around it was talking about it because I got them excited about it. And I know John Barrows was the guy who said it, which I fully agree in. Sales is the transfer of enthusiasm. If you can't get your customer excited about the outcome, then it's going to be difficult for them to be excited about making the purchase. And again, all this just stems from, do you have the belief? Do you understand the product knowledge? Have you seen what your product can actually do for customers? And if you haven't, you need to spend time doing that if you want to be better at sales.
Yeah, the great Zig Ziglar said, sales is a transference of enthusiasm and emotion of how you feel about the product. And so let's kind of dissect this just go one more layer, because I think we want everybody to get this, because it's easy to say, hey, you need to start out with enthusiasm, to which I would ask the question, okay, what begets enthusiasm? What gets me enthusiastic? And what you're saying is that, it's what I've always said, is that if you love your product, that's great. But what you really should love is what it does for your clients. And if I understand the value it delivers to my clients, I can get excited about selling my product.
Yep.
What would you add to that, or how would you peel that back?
Well, I'm a simple person. I'm honestly not sure how to peel that back. I would just probably tell the person to repeat the process over and over and observe what's happening. Like, just pay attention to the result that your customer is achieving. And it applies in any environment, whether it's a B2B environment or B2C. It really applies to any environment once you understand and look at what the outcome you're creating for your customer. You don't necessarily have to use the product or service yourself, because even thinking back, I used to work in a place that used to do kitchens and homes and stuff for people. And I was excited about how you get the kitchens done, but I was only excited because I went to the guys who built the kitchens and understood what the product was.
Mm-hmm.
So I think a lot of persons aren't doing that. They get into a job and they learn the process, they learn about the features and benefits, but they don't learn about the outcomes that it's creating for their customers. So they don't spend time learning those details and looking at those aspects.
I love what you say, because you mentioned something about you don't have to own it. In other words, you didn't have to have a kitchen developed by X, or you didn't have to have a pool to actually sell the pool. You had to understand the value delivered. And I think that's where you often hear the phrase imposter syndrome kick in with a lot of people. They go, well, I've never done that, so how can I sell something I've never used or owned? But you're highlighting what I think is I'll call it, you're highlighting a hack.
Yeah.
That even if you've never owned the pool, you can go look at the pool that the company built, go jump in somebody else's pool for a while, enjoy the pool, see what people, or talk to the customers you're saying, right? And understand what the value is. And then, okay, that's how we sell. That's the value we're selling. That's the emotional generator.
Yep. Because remember, and it's a great example with the pool. If I don't own a pool, I could probably talk to 2 or 3 of the last persons we did pool installations for, but focus on the emotion first. Like, how do you feel now that you have a pool? Because there was a reason why you came to us for it. And it could be several reasons. It's to show off on my neighbors that I have a bigger, better pool. Or it's really something for my kids because they're young and I want them learning how to swim. I want them to be enjoying themselves during the summertime. Or it could just simply because I know adding a pool ups my property value. And it did. Right. So if I understand these things and I start asking more and more customers and I start understanding what the trend is, then I could get excited about it, because when I reach out to somebody now, I know the value message that matters to them. So I sound way more experienced, and I also understand the jargon that they use to describe my product instead of using my jargon to describe my product. And that's one of the ways that you build the belief, because you'll start seeing the smiles on your customers' faces. They will start speaking about the outcomes that you've never seen because you don't have the product, but you get to understand it. And by the way, this is just not for B2B as well. Like, if you're in car sales, you may not own a Benz, but you understand what a Benz does for the individual. So it's just understanding what it is, what outcomes you're creating. So spend time talking to your customers. There's the hack. Spend time talking to existing customers.
I love that. And so let's use that. By the way, well stated, man. Well stated. So let's use that as almost like a pivot over to, I have imposter syndrome. I'm making this part. I have imposter syndrome. I'm trying to connect with somebody on LinkedIn, something you know a lot about, right? But I have imposter syndrome. I got to reach out. I'm doing demos, whatever. Let's just say I'm just an SDR, BDR. I'm doing, I'm trying to set up these meetings. but I'm intimidated to call somebody because I've never been I'll just say a VP of sales or a director of operations. How do I overcome that and start connecting with people on LinkedIn? How can you tie those? How can you help me get over that fear/imposter syndrome? Because I've never done that.
So I would take a page. Somebody on LinkedIn wrote about it. One of my connections, Charlotte is her name. She's a AE at Sales Loft. When she got into her role, what she did before was that exact thing that you described, Victor. She messaged all those VPs and said, "Hi, I'm really entering into this new role. I'm actually interested in just chatting and learning for you what's important and how you should be communicated with in order to sell better to other VPs in your industry." And she messaged about 10 or 15 of them, and I think a ridiculous amount of them actually responded and told her yes, and she was able to get the insight in order to be a better salesperson. So it's okay to feel imposter syndrome if you have just started, but as we keep going in with the theme of this conversation, you have to understand your customer. So reach out to persons, but be specific on this though. Tell them I don't want to sell you. I just need to understand how you prefer to buy. That's what I need to understand. I need to understand how you prefer to buy or how you prefer sales reps to approach you so that I can reach out to other persons. And I guarantee you, those persons will be one of the best mentors, buyer mentors that you can ever have in your sales career because they'll continuously give you insights.
I love that because you're saying, okay, reach out to people maybe you don't know and you'll get lucky like Charlotte did, right? And a couple of people will respond. But I think you would also agree that there's probably people you know who are in that position. Why not talk to them? I think I love that you're hammering home this message because I don't think we talk about this enough, is that how do you get over that? And so when you're reaching out for the first time, you come from a very confident background, given your history already. I know that, right? So I know this is not a problem for you. But if I'm just starting out as an SDR, BDR, let's say I do that and I don't get a lot of responses, how would you coach me to kind of really get out there? Let's say you're onboarding me, Jarrod, right? I'm coming to your company, you're onboarding me, and walk me through how you would help me in the first, let's say 30, 60, 90 days to really start leveraging, for example, LinkedIn and really make connections.
So, of course, we go with a proven framework. So number one, I'll show you what the top SDRs and AEs are doing. Then I'll actually let you listen in on those top calls that they have in terms of specifically how they're introducing themselves, how they're getting over objections, how they're booking meetings, how they're closing the sale. I think for the first 15 days, you need to spend time doing that. Then what I would do is give you some low-level prospects to test and reach out to practice either sending out video messages to them or just doing cold call outreaches and see if you've taken what you've learned into that aspect. The next 30 days now, we will go back and then I would actually start product training, as weird as it sounds, because I want you to actually see what people are talking about, be confused, and then let the product training tie the message in together. Oh, okay, that's what they meant by this. That's what they meant by that. Because what you'll start taking now is, again, the actual sales conversation and words use the jargon into your product training. And then the next 30 days will be your product training. And then on the 60th day is when we start you actually doing some calls. Then what I would do now is just monitor the level of those calls in terms of your success rate. And as I say, tweak as we go along by, of course, recording the conversations, replaying the conversations, highlighting what they're doing good, and just keep showing them the best practices.
And I love what you just said. So first 30 days, study the best, what the best of the best you're doing, right?
Yep.
Next 30 days, actually, study the product, become dominant. Now that you know what some of the questions and objections are going to be, you understand the product. Next 30 days, all right, let's get into it. Let's start doing this. Let's start coaching. Let's start monitoring. This is probably why people hire you all the time, right? Because you're this good.
So by the way, that one of the product of doing the listening to calls and then product first after was only this week that I got the idea. Like literally yesterday, because the group that I'm training already went out on the road and they came in yesterday for the training. So their perspective was different to the first group who had the training with me. Then they went out on the road. So
wait, say that again, guy, because I think I'm confused. So okay.
Oh, sorry. So
group one did.
I was training two groups. The first group, they started doing the sales training with me. Then they went out on the road to see how the sales were done by the current team. Then the team that I had yesterday, they already went on the road last week. So they are now doing the sales training today. So it's two different perspectives that they have. And I think honestly, this group appreciated what I was teaching more because they saw how they can apply it out in the field. Group 2, yes, they appreciated it
Who
more.
went out to the field first.
Yep.
And so now that you're doing the sales training, you go, oh, if you think about that, that kind of makes sense, right? Because if they do the sales training first, then they go on to the field. When they're doing the sales training, they don't really know how it's going to apply. But if they go out on the field and they get their asses kicked, if I can put it that way, right? Then when you come do the training, they go, oh, that's how I avoid getting my ass kicked.
This is how I could put the pieces of the puzzle together. And what they do, they were following the top reps and the team leads. So they were seeing the best examples of what to do, which is great. So to me, I think I think I may propose that as a better strategy going forward for some of the companies that I'm working with, especially if they have new sales reps.
By the way, there was one study I read, and it was just one study, so it's not a meta study. It's just one study that I found interesting that kind of validates what you just said. And that is, in the first 30 days, they just have them make calls, right? They just have them make calls, and what they're trying to do is get them to form habits. Number of dials, work the script, number of dials, work the script, work the script. Obviously, they're going to have their asses handed to them, if I can put it that way. And then they actually get into the actual training. And it seemed to be more sticky because they go, oh, yes. And so I'm just trying to validate what you're saying because I think it is a better approach. They go out there, and what they found is that they wanted them to develop better habits in the first 30 days. And what they found is they had a second group who they did product training with first, Jarrod. It was interesting. And what happened was in those first 30 days, they were so focused on the product, they'd never really developed the habits for prospecting and reaching out. And so group 1 was actually more successful because they've developed the prospecting habits. They were getting, again, a lot of rejections, but they were dealing with them because that was their job. They were told this is what's going to happen.
And I think so. And I think especially when you look at, when you speak about the imposter syndrome, I think operating in that approach reduces the imposter syndrome because they would have seen everything firsthand in the examples, and now they get the product training to help alleviate any concerns that they have so they could go forward making calls even more confidently than they did before. So I think, honestly, I may propose that as a new way to train when I'm doing new reps going forward.
What have you found along the lines of training here? Because it's always learning process. What you're learning right now is, okay, maybe I should do this first and that second, right? What have you found in terms of, if I said, because one of the biggest challenges a lot of companies are going to face in the future here is if they're having a high churn rate is bringing on new people, right? Onboarding people. Mm-hmm. What are some strategies or techniques that you use to get people to, I guess, be onboarded faster, learn the material, the content faster?
I don't know. That's a tough one because, again, I know I saw some trainers talking about this the other day where they were saying 90 days is too short of a time to onboard reps to learn the product and be good. But I think if there is a constant coaching mechanism in place, so in other words, I'm just thinking it may be better if you onboard a rep, put them on, do 30 days of onboarding, but then the next 60, 90 days only spent where they do half their sales and the other half is actually reviewing the calls and stuff that they made to improve going forward. Because I know onboarding time really differs depending on the industry that you're in. And I think the thing that's missing for a lot of companies, and I wrote about this on LinkedIn, is that the coaching aspect, I think, is what's missing in a lot of organizations. That is what keeps messing them up in the long run of why they have churn. So, for example, I always tell persons this: training for me is a firework. It's great. It's attractive. But then it disappears quickly. Right. Even if you spend, like, on average, I spend probably 6 weeks with a company once a week. But that disappears after time. But coaching, spending time in the field, in actual practice with them, creates a longer effect and creates a higher ROI. And I think if that is implemented quicker into the sales process, it would work. Because think about this, Victor. When they onboard quarterbacks in the NFL, do they say no, they have to wait 90 days before they play a game, or do they immediately play?
Yeah. Well,
so even if it's a novice, even if it's somebody who's never been in sales, they can still put them out there because there's constant coaching. There's different coaches for different things. I just think in sales, we keep missing that. We just have a manager or a sales admin. So I think the only way to onboard is to have coaches to help. So, and I'll go deep. Let me go deep on this. I think there should be, depending on the job, there should be coaches for everything. A coach to check out your tone of voice, a coach to help you on your analytics, a coach to help you with your tech, because tech onboarding is the next big issue in companies. You need a coach to help you with your outbound outreach. You need a coach to help you with your video outreach. You need a coach to help you with your messaging outreach on email, because remember, we're doing different cadences and multi-touches. So I think if you have persons with those specific skill sets, it works a lot better. But because think about it, and I posted about this, Andy Reid, who's the head coach for the Kansas City Chiefs, he has almost 30 people on his team. Why are managers trying to do just one? That's why onboarding fails. It's because there's no one to support the person going through the role. It's probably I'm sure most persons are left to the hands of onboarding to an experienced AE or SDR or the manager. It's never where it's somebody who's super specialized in one thing to train them, coach them, onboard them, and then the overall sales data or analyst coach is looking at the figures and the results to actually give them feedback to say, you're doing well in this, you're doing well in this, but we need to bring in the video coach because your videos aren't doing that well. So you bring in the video coach to help you this week. We don't. That's what impacts onboarding to me.
That's it. It's a fascinating concept. I'm listening to you intently here, by the way, because I'm going, yeah, I never looked at it that way. It's a paradigm shift, right? Because you're right. My question was going to be, how can managers be better coaches? But then you trumped me by saying, wait a minute. You're basically saying, can one manager be the ultimate coach in all these different aspects?
Impossible.
Yeah. That's really interesting, a perspective. But that creates a conundrum, doesn't it? Because if you're a large company like Salesforce, for example, you could probably hire 30 different coaches, to use your analogy. But if you're a small, medium-sized business, you can't hire 30 coaches. And so
you can outsource 5 people who can help you with certain things. Or what you can do is find the most important metric that you want to improve, hire an external consultant for a short period of time as a coach, 3 to 6 months, to work with your team, and you can see the ROI from that specific result. So therefore, instead of having 8, 10 different coaches, there's one coach for one specific activity, and you're looking for improvement in one specific outcome. Like, start small. It doesn't have to be a full team, but even with a manager with a small team of 10, it's impossible for a manager to coach the existing team and onboard a brand new person. In addition to achieving all their tasks and looking at all the numbers and doing all the other management tasks that they have with the team, it's not possible. It's not fair.
Correct. I like that. Yeah, this is a good conversation, because what you're saying is we focus on we identify high leverage activities, the ones that give us the big ROIs, right? And then we can just start coaching there at a small level. But then you kind of raise another question now, which I think is an interesting one. It's a good conversation, which is, what should be the ratio from manager? You say, manager can't handle 10. So what's the ratio? What would you, finger to the wind, scientific wild ass guess, as they say, a swag. What would you say the ratio should be for manager to salespeople?
That I'm not sure of. And I think that is hard to determine because, again, it will all be based on the industry, the product that you sell, and also to even the sales cycle.
Let's say it's a complex product. These are long sales cycle. Average deal size is $500,000 to $1 million. Manager to sales. I'm pushing you here, man. I'm getting a number out of you one way or another. So you better give me what?
No, start with 10. Start with 10. But I think the more reps you have, the more complex it gets. Because remember, you're not only managing the reps, you're managing their different personalities. You're most likely managing the different territories that they're also taking care of. So different things come into play, but I would say a safe number to always look at is probably anything from 10 to 20 persons. Anything above that, depending on the industry, will be too much work for the manager to do to deliver the results that you want.
Yeah. I mean, I would think that if I had a sales force, which I've had in the past, and then I had to manage people, I would manage, but what I was doing is I had like 40, 50 salespeople. So I was managing 5 regional managers. It kind of filters down. So I work with my 5 regional managers, and then the regional managers work with their 3 to 5 or 7 people, depending on the distribution. But I don't think we've ever had more than 10 manager to salesperson ratio. Because if you think about it, if you want to spend time, at least sometimes you got to spend time on the road. By the way, I know that it's a difficult question to answer, by the way, because if there's a lot of time on the road, well, that means I can spend less time with other salespeople. So it's a really hard number depending on what the mix is, but it's a very good question you're bringing up. And the whole concept of having a different coach for different aspects because the manager can't know it all.
Yep.
Because we know how it works, right? SBR or AE gets promoted to a manager and they're like, here's how I used to do it. That's all I know. And so when you're training sales companies, what are some of your biggest frustrations when you're training a company, you're training their sales teams? What are some of your biggest frustrations and how do you handle some of those? Just pick one or two.
The biggest frustration I have, unfortunately, I've had two companies that did the opposite, so they were my favorites, is companies who train everyone versus just training the teams that actually will execute what they're taught. Because I don't like being in trainings where, because we all know the ratio. There's always a percentage of persons that won't do anything with the training, and there's always a small percentage that will do great stuff with the training, and then there's the big group in between are the ones who they will do small results. But I'm always upset with companies because they will tell you, Victor, I don't have the budget for training. And I always tell them, but you don't need to train everyone. Can we train the top 20%? So right. I've had companies who did that. Like they literally handpicked who they knew were going to give them the best ROI because they had the data to show it. And the training was absolutely fantastic. So that is my first major pet peeve with companies and training. You do not need to train everyone. Contrary to rumor, you do not need to train everyone.
Do you realize I'm going to get a lot of feedback on this one? What you just said is almost heresy, man. It borders on, the torches and the pitchforks are going to come out for you, man, because they're going to go, what did he just say? Did he just say not train everybody? Is that what Jarrod just said?
Yeah.
Just train the best of the best? Is that what Jarrod Mitchell
hold on.
saying?
Not train the best of the best. Train the best of the coachable. The best who you know are going to execute what is taught, what is taught, because that's where you get the greatest ROI. Then you can probably, with that ROI earned, you can take that revenue and reinvest it into training the others. But I don't think you should train everyone. I honestly think training should be earned. You get an additional training on onboarding, but additional training should be earned based on your performance. It should be earned based on your ability to be coachable. If you think that I deserve training and you need to train me, those persons are the worst to have in a training session. The absolute worst. They have a horrible attitude. They're always interrupting. They always come in like they know it all. And worse, they never execute what they learn because they still think the way I operate is the best. I don't want that. I want the people who are coachable. I want the people who can execute. So therefore, training should only be done for the people who are actually coachable. It should not be done for an entire team.
Dude, that is such a paradigm shift. I'm digging that, by the way.
But and Victor, you know it. The numbers. When you look at what the numbers will be from that type of training, right. It will the numbers will skyrocket even more because those coachable people who can execute will literally double sales. So
by the way, it's such a novel concept. Do you know what I mean? What you're saying? I don't hear. If people have, by the way, I'm sure people have thought about it, but nobody's voiced it. Not that I've heard anybody voice that. You should only train the coachable is what you're saying.
Yep.
If I can be very succinct, right? If they're not coachable, don't train them. Don't invite them into the training. They're just going to take away or subtract from what's going on in the training.
Especially if you're on a budget. Train only who is coachable. Don't train everyone.
Interesting. That is an interesting concept. And so, have you started doing that? And have you seen some results with that? I mean, I'm sure you feel the difference. You feel the difference. Well, tell me about that. Because I mean, this is such interesting approach.
So the last company I trained was a car insurance company in Trinidad. And they specifically picked the individuals for the training. The first sign that you saw where the training was making an impact, the manager for all of them came to me the second day and said, I have so many emails in my inbox from the team about getting their updated databases because we were talking about ICP the day before. Like you immediately saw the changes. Every single day, there was something new. So at the end of the training, the manager was bombarded with all the different things that the team needed that she had to support with so that they could go out and execute in the field. So a couple of those persons who were in the training, of course, being sales, they're in different levels in the company, as in, so because it's insurance, it's like diamond, ruby, platinum. And there was like 20% of those who were in the bottom level, they jumped up to the middle level when they weren't forecasted to. And 2 who in the middle level went up to the top level when they weren't forecasted to either. So you saw the outcome, which means that those persons produced about, on average, a combined probably $500,000 extra in revenue from the training, and what they paid me was minimal. So the ROI was instant.
What I love about this thought process is that you're not equating training. Top performers are not necessarily coachable. You know what I mean? In fact, one point could argue that top performers are rarely coachable because they know it all.
Correct.
You know? And so really what you're saying is indirectly say, okay, I don't want a top performers, assuming they're not coachable. I'm sure there's some top performers who are always coachable, right?
Yeah.
There's a special elite group that even if they're hitting their number, they're like, okay, I want to get better. I want to get better. There's always that percentage. But you're also saying that you're looking for coachability, and it's a nice paradigm shift, I think, what you're presenting or what you're talking about. You know what I mean? Let's look for those rough nuggets that really want to make it. They're hungry to go to the next level. As you say, ruby, diamond, platinum,
Yep.
whatever it may be, and moving up. And so when you're, the feedback you got from the salespeople who are coachable, what type of feedback were you getting back from them? Maybe at the end of the day or end of a couple of days with trading, what did you get from them? Not the manager, from
As always, you get a lot of them saying thank you because you changed my perspective on sales. You really added value to what I do. But what you get is a massive level of engagement. Sometimes you're in a training and you also have to single out people because they're quiet. Nope. Everyone was participating. Everyone was asking questions. And something that I love in my training, a lot of people challenge things because, Jarrod, why would you do it this way? I would do it this way. Like, it was so many individual, detailed back and forth conversations throughout the entire training. And I don't think that would have happened if it is that they just decided to train only the top 20%. Because, by the way, that's what they originally did. So based on how their organization is with Ruby, Diamond, Platinum, they only used to provide training for the first two. I actually got them to include the persons at the bottom into the training because I said, let's get the coachable ones and the ones who you see the potential. Because why, and it's the same point, why bring a top performer if they do not want to be there, if they do not want to be in training? Great. Leave them out. They're making your revenue. Let's get the ones who we can squeeze additional revenue out of. So yeah.
And I love what you're saying, again, indirectly, is that the group dynamic changes, right? Because
it was amazing, Victor. It was literally one of the best trainings I ever had. It was at the end of last year, so it made my end of year absolutely amazing. It was so great to have like all that feedback, all those different types of discussions. And of course, you saw people 2-3 weeks after still messaging you saying, Jarrod, I just tried this and it worked. I just wanted to give you an update. So thank you so much for introducing that to me. Jarrod, I just ran my first email campaign and we got so many different responses and offers from it. So that's what makes me smile. And it wouldn't have happened if you just decided to put everyone in the training or whoever your top 20.
Yeah. So do me a favor. I want you to hover above your sales training that day, right? Just hover above it, right? And psychoanalyze the group dynamics, right? Do you know what I mean? Like, analyze the group dynamics, why it changed compared to what you used to do. Now you're hovering above this new one. You go, oh, look at all the things that are changing. Can you do that?
So expand for me. What do you mean by group dynamics? Can I get an example just so I can understand?
Group dynamics is people felt more safe to speak up because, you know what I mean? That's what I'm talking about. The group dynamics.
The group dynamic honestly was the manager. Because she's very straightforward, and she's excellent at knowing who her team was, like the different characteristics and the personalities. The other thing that made the group dynamic change is that she calls out bullshit, because she in the training, for example, I would give an example of a sales strategy, and somebody would say, "Yeah, Jarrod, I do that all the time," and she said, "No, you don't, because your revenue has dropped for the last 2 years."
Damn! Ouch! She was calling him out like that.
Immediately. And she kept reminding them, I know your stats. And she said, you don't, because you're not asking for it. I know your stats. So whatever you say here. So it happened like 3-4 times.
So that created, you got to be honest. You know what I mean?
It created the honesty for everybody to come out and be open and be vulnerable and say, this is where I think I need help. Or can you explain this more for me? Because I think this is applicable to my business. And it really made the training like very customized, because the feedback that I had before the training through a survey that I do applied with what I kept learning every day. Like, for example, I did a training for a similar company last year and I did over 100 slides. So because it's a similar company, I thought, great, I don't need to duplicate these slides. I had to create another 100 slides because there was so much different nuances, as you say, dynamics involved and perspectives that I had to make sure and show how do you do it from a sales side of things. And as I said, I think that's what really made the difference. As I said, that feedback, the selection of the persons and the manager, it was a perfect combination.
I love the fact that the manager's there calling out the BS, right?
Yes.
That's one. I think also, and I guess I wanted you to kind of add a little more flavor to this. When people became more, I'll say, I don't want to use the word vulnerable. It's not what I'm looking for, but they were open to saying, I don't know how to do this. And they felt safe or okay. Talk to me about that environment, how you were able to keep, because you got to nurture that the right way. That's where you as a sales trainer, that's where some of the skill comes in, because you have to keep that openness going, right? So talk to me about that. How do you create that safe environment where people just tell you what I'm here, I don't know how to do this. And then how do you keep it going?
It doesn't happen from the first session, but I think if you show them through research that you understand where they're coming from and what they're trying to achieve, you create the openness. But I think it goes back to the main factor of you have to bring people who are coachable. Somebody who thinks that they don't need any help, they would not be open, they wouldn't be honest, they wouldn't be that kind of contributing person in a training. Everyone in this training was, as I said, because they were selected, they were open to getting the feedback of where they were doing wrong and how to become better. Even
but
so,
I don't want to interrupt, but I need to get this because I know it's there and I want people to really value what you offer. How did you pull them in? Do you know what I mean? How did you mentally pull them in so they can start giving you some real world, here's where I need help? How does Jarrod Mitchell do that? How do you pull them into the conversation when they're still a little scared?
I don't know. That's a good question. Like if I think about it, I could tell you I'm honestly not sure. I don't want to say it's because my training is awesome. I think that's just too much of a vague answer.
No,
but
yeah.
I honestly not sure. I think it's probably just my personality and probably how you ask the questions in particular that get them to bring it out. But I can't say I have an answer for that for you as yet to figure out how I did it. I
guess that's why I was asking you to hover above yourself and look down. Because I think what you might find, knowing what I know about you, is that one is that your personality is very nice, it's very warm, it's very inviting. Two, I'm sure you're asking questions. Three, I'm sure you're trying to make them be the hero, no matter what they're failing at, right? You say, we can do this, right? And I think that's kind of what I'm trying to get to. Is like, I'm sure if you were to analyze what you do, there's probably a lot of subtleties that you do to pull people in. And, I guess I want you to really think about that. If I could, share that with you.
I need to get back with you with that answer. I think that's a really good question.
Because I think what happens is like when I do training, and I have people who start saying, well, I don't know how to do this. Then I'm saying, well, let's break this down. I said, because it's really not that hard. And then they go, it's A, B, C. Now, tell me where you're struggling, because somebody else in the room is struggling. And I always say that somebody else in the room is struggling.
Yep.
So by me working with you, I'm also helping people who don't want to admit that. And I say this out loud, actually. And you know what other people are thinking? Like, yeah, I'm glad he's doing that one. And then I always make sure that whatever example I go through with somebody, I make that person look like a hero at the end of that.
Yeah.
Even if they didn't get it perfect, right? The script and whatever it may. Anyway, those are things I do. And I guess I was trying to pull some from you. Like maybe I could learn from you. Like, what do you do?
I don't know. I honestly just think it was the conversations and how I position the questions, but I would still say it was the actual individuals being open to learning. I think that to me was the key dynamic combined with the information being shown to them, because what I think always throws off a lot of people, especially when you're training in the Caribbean, they're shocked at how much research I do.
Right.
And more importantly for me, how quick I could create context for their market specifically. So I think
by the way, those are two things. One is that you studied their industry. Two, you created context for their situations. They go, he really understands me. So that's part of making them feel comfortable. Like he gets it. He understands it. He knows how to work with us. And then your conversations, going through that. Because I think it's hard.
That's why I said the training material wasn't generic. It was like I can't even use those 100 slides for anyone else.
Mhm.
It
Yep.
was like super specific to them, even broken down like, again, the ruby, diamond, platinum persons. Like it was specific to them, their specific sales process and how it should look now, all the different types of conversations, how to run an email campaign cadence to generate sales. Like it was dead specific to them. Like I can't use it anywhere else. And I think that research, and again, not only showing them the new information, but how to do it as well was super key. So for example,
Yeah.
I don't ever do training by myself, ever. I always bring in experts, just like I mentioned before. So I'm not an expert on email campaigns. I brought someone in. I'm not an expert on SEO and digital. I brought someone in. So it's just to show them from a perspective where I want to bring people who could relate specifically to what you do and give you the exact know-how, like step-by-step process of doing stuff. And like one of the best breakthroughs was a lot of them didn't actually have their Google My Business page set up. And like we were setting that up for them. And that was like the biggest excitement because they understood from the training before why the Google My Business page was important. And then they understood how to use it for their business. So everybody was literally like, I need this done today. We were in the session, it was like everybody, every single person was like, we need to get this done today. So
and that activity builds that, I build their confidence, but then they start liking you more.
yes,
And then
they start understanding that, yes, I do know what they're trying to achieve. It's just that a lot of them didn't know what it was that they wanted to achieve. And I was able to show them not only what it was, but how to get it.
So, I mean, so those are the notes I would have answered with that, Victor, I show them what to do so they know step by step how it works. I take them through something experiential, like building the Google page, right? Like that, they can do it. Those are the things that you do that are very subtle, that if you were to analyze your own presentations, these are all the things I do to pull them in, man. So I'm trying to give you more credit for what you do. And just not stray you. There's stuff that's going on and doing with them. So two final questions. If you look at the companies, like what type of companies do you typically work with? So anybody listening to this podcast, whether it's in the Caribbean, the United States, or worldwide, what is your ICP, ideal client profile? Here are the companies that I like to work with, Victor. Here's kind of what they look like. And so if somebody's listening to this, they can reach out to you.
I would honestly say right now, my ideal client profile are for companies who are specific in the telecoms industries, both B2C and B2B, and in the insurance industry. I have honestly spent a lot of time researching insurance on all different levels, and I know how to help your reps and your team actually sell better to your customers. It is one of the things that, in particular with insurance, is something I truly, truly enjoy. If I had to say what my ICP was, would be those two specific categories.
Telecom and insurance. And last but not least, tell these folks where they can find out more information about you and all your wonderful content.
Oh, nice. So my website, jarrodmitchell.com. And of course, you can always find me on LinkedIn, where I always do my best to try and send as many video messages to my new connections as possible. That's one of the key things, key areas that you can actually find me. Those are my two main areas. I should, because I know you would buff me for this, you'd be angry. I would get my YouTube and stuff up running where I take all my video content and put it across on my YouTube channel this year. That's being done this year.
Well, you got a lot of video content out there. Anyway, check out Jarrod Mitchell. Just check out his LinkedIn profile. Check out his content. Follow him. One of the things I love about Jarrod is also he's a consummate reader. He's always reading everybody's content. He's always posting pictures of the books, but also he highlights what he likes, which I love. And I also like the videos that you create. They're very personal. So follow Jarrod Mitchell. Do you say Mitchell? How do you say that?
Mitchell.
Mitchell.
Yes.
Jarrod Mitchell. The information will be on the YouTube channel. And after you check out my man, check out the Sales Velocity Academy. Got some new courses, new master classes, having fun with that. And on that note, this is Victor Antonio, always reminding you that selling ain't hard when you know how. Take care.
Big Tin Can is the world's leading sales learning and enablement platform that delivers the onboarding and training, preparation, coaching, customer engagement, and follow-up and insights that modern businesses need to win.